Listen to the silence. The old house up on the hill, the birds chirping, the body very easy to miss in the tall grass. And us about to hit the road. Yep, that's what this game's about. It's all about the contrast. You might call it creepy and comfy in some ways. Hello, everyone, and welcome back, once again, to The Long Drive. And in this show, I don't really have a goal. It's all just kind of about aimlessly driving around and getting out whatever thoughts happen to be knocking around in my skull today. Oh, wow, I'm having a real hard time maintaining control of this. What is going on back there? I think that barrel might be causing some interference in my plans. Last time, we had a lot of trouble keeping this car on the road, but I think today I'm going to make an attempt to get back to the more podcasty nature that I always intended for this. Darwin, you are truly scattered to the wind. Hang on now. Are you the cause? You're not moving much. You're actually kind of stuck amidst all this other stuff. There's that wire brush that I lost a while back. Oh man, we just cannot stop with the jankiness, can we? Hang on, let's try and get a little bit farther. Yeah, last time we were having some serious issues with the coolant, but we've resolved that. And now we need to make a pledge to never let it get that bad again. Yeah, you're riding strangely. Why are you doing that? Okay, we've got to resolve this right now. We are turning this thing around and figuring this out. Now, what is... Oh, that's why! Darwin, your body is partially under the wheel! Okay, so what tool would a mechanic use to fix this? Probably call in some mob connections, right? I mean, in this situation. Alright, let's go. Come on, Darwin. I know you can get out of there. Wow, you are really stuck in there good. And your skull and pelvis are stuck up here. Some of you speculated that this would happen sooner or later. You've just been getting progressively more screwed up with each subsequent reload. This game just does not like having bodies back there. I suspect it's supplying some kind of, like, special physics to things that are within these trailers to keep them from flying out. But just regular physics probably would have served it better. Come on, we're almost there. We can do it, we just gotta do it piece by piece. Yep. Where's that skull? These are the kind of problems you run into on a road trip. Which is why it always pays to be prepared. Okay, we might have to do something about this. So we'll load you back here, see how far we can get on that. Actually, you know what? I get it now. You were trying to tell me that this is your stop. You were just hitchhiking, that's why you were waiting for me. Okay, well, we'll bring you back home. There were a couple of squatters, so, we just went ahead and took care of that for you, but let's just plop you right back home. You are very clearly tuckered out from the very long road trip. We were carrying you for like hundreds of kilometers. I believe the menu said we were at 387, which, given how long we've been driving, seems low. But some of you did say that the scaling is actually fairly accurate, which is kind of cool. I mean, I really like the idea that this is something that you can just hop into and make a little bit of progress, a little at a time each day. It makes it feel like you're working towards something greater, you know? All while you're doing all this little stuff on the road. And don't worry, we'll take care of that while we're at it. Yep, you're just out there running yourself over. Darwin, I see why you barricaded your room with your bed. And you just rest your pretty little head right over here. Sleep tight, champ. And we will get a move on. Alright, are you dead? I swear my car has killed more of you while I wasn't even in it than I have. Let's just stick this back over here so that Darwin can put you in a stew later. And actually, some of you said that it would be a good idea for me to fill up my oil. That you don't even necessarily have to be empty before you start seeing some ill effects. I'm not sure what it does exactly, but we might as well, right? We're at 1.8 out of 5. Come on. There we go. Perfect. And then drop you here, and we'll do the other one as well. Because what I'm learning is that it always pays to top off in every single one of your needs in this game. It's so easy to let things go ignored. There we are. And that should leave us in a much better state. Some of you said, why do you never close the caps? I always close the caps, and they're always open again when I come to look at them. I don't know why it does it. I don't know if it's between reloads or what, but that's what keeps happening. And I guess just because it's bothering me, we might as well use the wire brush to finish this job. Yep. There we are. That's looking at least a little better. I think you're already done. Do we still have spray paint? Now we've gotten another archetypal road trip experience, the stopping to cross your T's and dot your I's in front of your buddy's house. Alright, well, I've tried everything, and I'm not really sure why it's not working, but this once again feels the way it's supposed to. And after that little detour, we are back on the road, and we can let our thoughts wander. That's one of the cool things about this game. It's the road trip without the responsibility. Even the driver doesn't have to worry about paying attention. I mean, you still probably should, but you don't have to. Later, Darwin. You're welcome, Darwin. Oh, is that actually the first time we've hit one of these at full speed? Usually they run themselves over. Now, my commentary is going to be all over the place in this one, if previous episodes are to be any indication, but just a couple of, basic ground rules. If I start talking about, a movie or something, I'll try and put spoiler tags so that you know what to skip to. And if I don't put them on the video, if I forget or I can't for whatever reason, they'll be pinned in the comments down below. Although I have to say, I am really generally averse to talking about movies and such in videos. Come on, Road Rock. Wow, what is going on here? Hang on. First of all, I always forget how fast I am. And the terrain is really doing some Inception stuff here, rolling away and revealing the road as it goes. Yeah, I am in general just really averse to talking about movies on the channel, because look, I can put up spoiler tags, and I would certainly have a lot to talk about, but I prefer to do it only briefly because I feel like it alienates part of the audience, you know? I don't want people to have to skip ahead in the video. However, there are a couple of horror movies I've seen recently, courtesy of Matthew, which I really, really liked, and they're kinda somewhat related. So the two movies were, first of all, 30 Days of Night, which is a movie that was being advertised all over the place when I was in middle school, and I only now got to see it with them, and I thought it was really awesome. It's one of those rare movies. What's happening? Whoa! Ow! What was that about? We just, slowed to a crawl and then got launched forward. I think this game's fallen apart. Yeah, we are experiencing... This is like lag, but in single player. What is happening to us? Hang on, let me out. We didn't take any damage, but everything is just going wonky. Okay, are we pushing this game to its limit now? We shouldn't be. We're not even 20% of the way down this road. Not even 10%. But I can't... we're stuck. Thing flipped over. I don't know what to do about this. Hang on. Can I remove you? Okay. Try and put you back. Come on. Yep, now I know you things are locked in. Well, that's a useful feature to be sure. Can I trust this car now? Why did all that happen? The sun is setting. And in a world like this, in a world with these rabbits and monsters, I definitely feel that that's the time when we have to go. You know what I think it is? I think it's... I saw the AK sticking out of the bottom before, but I just cannot find it now. That's going to be a huge issue, because the movies that I watched with Matthew are 30 Days of Night and Daybreakers. And so my two kind of hobby horses right now are vampires done creatively, because I just find that so cool. It's so underutilized in movies, and there's so much you can do. 30 Days of Night is essentially about what would happen if vampires arrived at a town in Alaska where they literally have a month straight of night, and it's essentially a feeding frenzy. And Daybreakers is about a vampire apocalypse in which they retain their faculties, but the apocalypse part is already over, and it's about dealing with, like, the vampire society that forms, which, as it turns out, is not all that different from us, and it's really about our dependency on oil, but, you know, they do it there in the form of blood. Okay, come on. I don't want to spend all night on this. There we go. Why can I not catch a single break these last two episodes with getting this car to actually function? There we go. I wonder if it would be possible to get, like, UV headlights on this thing. You're plowing down the road, hordes of vampires flying over the roof of your car like bats. You're just watching them burst into flames as they pass over your roof. Now that would be cool. I love, like, unique takes on vampire rules and, like, people applying modern solutions to that, like, medieval problem. 30 Days of Night is one of those rare movies, and the reason I haven't put spoiler tags up on the screen is because I'm trying to be, like, as vague as possible right now so anyone can follow along. 30 Days of Night is one of those rare movies that I really, really enjoyed, despite having a lot of logical problems with. Like, there's so much to pick apart, but there's also so much that's so well done that you don't care. Oh, we're hitting that slow down again. It's goofy while not being a comedy, and it's got enough genuine horror where you're watching that and actually thinking about what you would do in such a situation. Which I think is actually, like, the exact perfect spot for a couch horror movie, you know? Okay, so what do we do when we hit these slowdowns? This is bizarre. Maybe it's because this thing is... Oh, wait, no, there's you. Okay, you're going in the back, as are you. Talking about vampires, it makes me really averse to standing on the side of the road now. I think I've talked about this before, but I want to do something, write something, make a movie, something with, like, old school vampires. You know, the kind that saps life from people in the village, but never actually leaves the grave. I feel like there's something you can do for a lot of different creatures, but do it from, like, the original perspective. Because they all come about as sort of explanations for something that was happening to people, that really was happening to people, that they didn't understand. I've heard it theorized that the original vampire myths come from people coming down with anemia. Or, I feel like it's weird to say coming down with anemia, but you know what I mean. Actually, the vampires in both of the movies I mentioned are done in a pretty cool way, too. Where the vampires in 30 Days of Night are... They're sort of simultaneously intelligent and human-like, and monstrous. Which, it manages to do both in a way that's not a contradiction, without compromising on either. Whereas in Daybreakers, they're completely intelligent. They're essentially just immortal people with fangs and red eyes. But there's this interesting twist where if they're deprived of blood for too long, they start to go full, like, Count Orlok. It also brings up the interesting idea of, like, yeah, there was the apocalypse and the vampires won, but a lot of people with a rational mind, even though there's minds dedicated to researching a cure, a lot of people don't want to give it up. Sure, it's an unnatural state, and it comes with its own problems, such as dependency on human blood, which many of them consider to be cruel but necessary, much like, you know, the modern meat industry. But also, it's just, like, being a vampire is kind of a physiological improvement in every way. They don't really feel pain, they can't die naturally. I don't think they can fly, although that would be pretty cool. Yeah, I feel like I was vague enough with that. I pretty much only touched on the premises, so I probably don't really need to throw up, like, spoiler tags. Oop. Wow, I don't know if I've seen the road be all wibbly like that before. But this is one of the calmer nights we've had in a while. No danger, no stops. I feel like the stops are becoming fewer and farther between. The roads are getting bumpier, the grass almost seems just a hair taller. But I feel like this probably makes for good company, just sailing down the road at night talking about whatever movies we may have seen. I love friends who are willing to just be like, yeah, I'm bored, and pick you up at 2 a.m. and just drive around. Alright, but let's see if we can get ourselves some water. It'll depend on the height of the sink, but we'll fill up entirely if we get the chance. Like that entire barrel. I can hear the engine cooling off, but it's not nearly as bad as before, which is encouraging. I absolutely love games that have a silhouette where you can see yourself. It's so good for roleplay. Anybody here? Oh, this one's abandoned. I'm not seeing a sink either. We will have to take care of our needs, so I'll cut away from that. Some of you guys said, like, yeah, you were trying to watch the previous part, and you can just hear me, like, burping and farting all over the place while you're trying to sleep. Well, there's plenty of food. Ooh. Here's a door that's actually in, I believe, our size and color. Can we replace you? If so, that would actually be a huge deal. There we go! Okay, this car is actually somewhat complete now. Let's go. I keep grabbing the door handle by mistake. I mean the window roller. Yeah, we should actually probably pick up the pace, because we're losing a fair bit of health. We've replenished our food, but we really still are in need of water. Some of you said that those towers that I've been passing are actually water towers. Do they have, like, I realize they're water towers, but do they actually have a faucet on them? Because I haven't been up to them since, like, the very beginning of the game. I suppose we'll check out the next one we see. Oh, so absolutely random thought just popped into my head, but this is one of those stories that, like, I'll tell to anyone who will listen. So I was in, like, I think I would have been in 10th grade, right? And I had one of these, like, really annoying English teachers, and it seems like everybody in school either loved or hated their English teachers, and with me, I loved just about all of them, except for this one. Like, she was really annoying in a lot of ways, but this just, like, absolutely took the cake, because this is, like, I think the first time I realized I was actually being, like, maliciously targeted by an adult. So we had this reading assignment, you know, it was a typical thing. We were supposed to pick our own book to read and then do a report on it, like, a couple months later, because they gave us, like, an embarrassingly long time for these things, because there were very low expectations. And I was in the library, you know, we're picking our things out, and I come across Red Storm Rising by Tom Clancy. And for those of you who know Tom Clancy, he writes all these, like, military fiction stories, you know, all these, like, espionage stories and theoretical World War III scenarios, and he just talks about them in, like, excruciating detail. I'm actually kind of into that stuff, but I wasn't about to do this for an English project. So I pick it up, it's this like 700-page doorstopper, and just as I'm holding it, looking at it, she comes up behind me and she goes, "There's no way you're doing all that, put it back," in like the most dismissive tone. And so even though I didn't intend to, obviously now I had to. So I take it home, I check it out, and I start reading. And, you know, within about a month or so, I finish this thing, and I write a report on it. So the time comes to hand it in, and I walk up to the desk, I put my report on the table, and she looks at it, reads the header, and then looks up at me and makes like this disgusted face. Like she literally looked like I just spit in her mouth or something. And then I go and I sit down, and she stands up and announces to the class that she... I still can't parse this. I wonder if I didn't understand it correctly, because there's no way this could actually be the case, but she totally would do something like this. She stands up and says she didn't make the grading rubric, and so we'll all have to read a new book and write a new report and hand that in. And she gives us like an extra 2 weeks or something like that. So 2 weeks go by, I hand in the same report because I wasn't doing another book after all that. And, you know, a couple days go by, she hands it back to me with like a 70 or a 75 and no notes. I have no idea what her problem with this was, but there you have it. I am losing control so much. Wow, this terrain is actually really, really challenging. Probably doesn't help that there's the possibility that things are clipping through the car and subtly screwing with its course. But also I have an engine that really does not belong under this hood. And I'm hefting a trailer going 100 kilometers an hour, so who knows. Wow, this whole thing really is just driving across the Midwestern US simulator, isn't it? One of these days, I honestly want to, because look, the furthest west I've ever been is Chicago, and that was a huge outlier, so one of these days, I do want to just spend the money and take the Amtrak and just, like, go west, just go to, like, the Pacific Northwest or something. I feel like that would be a lot of fun. We've got a ship up there. Some of you said that the ship doesn't spawn water. I don't know if that's true or not. I feel like I might have found water in one in multiplayer once. When I was screwing around with my friend Sarah. This place should have a sink. This place should have a sink. I think this might actually be a place where we can fill up the barrel. There's tons of items either way, so that is awesome. Okay, I was waiting to see if the parking brake would do its job. Let's just grab this here barrel. Actually, let's focus on filling up something small first. Your gas, you're empty. I just slammed straight headfirst into the window. I'm actually not sure. Has anybody made a VR mod for this game? I feel like that would work exceptionally well. I mean, with the arm control, it almost controls like VR anyway. Okay, there's a whole bunch of water. So we'll fill up this. Come on now. And we'll drink from it. That'll be our drinking water, and then whatever's left, we'll put into the barrel. Yep. Let's make sure we do this right. We don't want to lose anything. There we are. I don't know how precise it has to be. And that's a little finicky to control with a mouse. But let's have ourselves a sip. Yep, and our needs are officially restored and should be restored for a good long while. That is a load off. So that's the thing, is there's a bit of a, not a learning curve, because all this is pretty logical, but if you neglect this stuff, that's when you get into a bad situation. It's actually my favorite kind of survival, where it exists alongside other primary mechanics, and it's bad if you neglect it, but if you don't, it's not too much of a hassle. See, these roadside stations are actually deceptively useful, because even though they don't tend to have a ton of loot, they're some of the only places where you can actually fill up a barrel, just because they're the only place where there's room under the sink. But there we go. Only 4.4 liters of water, but you know what? When you have the need for coolant, that's very useful. We're gonna have to make some room. Also, sorry, my voice is not there. I usually try to avoid recording when I've just woken up. At this time, it's about 5:30 in the morning. But I feel like this is kind of the exception game. The kind that is really, really good to play when you're really drowsy. I mean, that's essentially what I did last time, and it was actually a pretty good experience. Here, when you fall asleep and veer off the road and slam into a pole at 100 kilometers an hour, it's just kind of funny. There's a whole lot of you here. I feel like you guys are getting more and more frequent. You're getting bolder, too. You used to clear the road when I came. I think some of you said that there are mods that extend the night or make it like permanent night. I don't know, I just wish they lasted longer. Oh, there's a tower, but not one of them water towers. Next time we go there, we'll have to stop and see if they have a faucet. More importantly, see if they have a faucet that we can put a barrel under. I just got done doing the January reading for the channel, and I would love to do more readings. You would think that they would be like really easy to do, but actually they're not. Those are some of the hardest videos for me to make, believe it or not, because I'm just like bad at them, and I don't know why. I think it's entirely psychological. Because when I'm reading or when I'm giving commentary, I pay like very close attention to the way my mouth moves. I'm constantly listening to myself, and as soon as I listen to myself, it kind of, something in my brain just stops. And I screw up words, I can't get the tone right, it's so difficult. And so it takes me a really long time to get through even a short story. I'm actually really glad that I promised somebody who asked, because there was a period where I didn't do readings for a while, and somebody asked, like, hey, what happened to readings? And I said, okay, I'm going to make an effort to get out at least one a month. And I've held myself to that ever since, for over a year now. And I'm glad, because readings are some of my favorite videos to go back and listen to, and I'm glad that the library is building. It's just so hard for me to get through. And I think it's for the same reason. Yep. I'm doing it on purpose at this point. Oh, I didn't even hit him. Okay. Oh, and now I can't move. Well, that was a weird couple of seconds. I like couldn't even apply throttle. Alright, let's get out of here. Strange things are starting to happen with the physics. I wonder what actually happens when you get to the end of this whole 5,000 kilometer road. Like, what could possibly be there? This game is a couple years old, and I don't think it's updated super frequently, although it's definitely not abandoned from what I've read. And I know I should be pacing myself more, but when you look at all that's in front of you, it's kind of hard not to just floor it. Oh, but as I was saying, I don't know if I talked about this in the previous episode or not. I talked about it somewhere. But although it's less so now than it used to be, I will often spend a long time just trying to do the intro. Much more often now I get it on the first take, but it used to be, especially towards like the beginning of the channel when I started doing like Gmod VR and stuff, there were times when I would spend like an hour trying to just do the intro. Yep. Hello, what have we got off in the distance there? I see a ship, but I see something else as well. Something off to the side of the road. Is that going to be a gas station? This is one of those times where we just have to... I made the mortal mistake of touching the wheel while I was braking. Yeah, it's a gas station. We are actually in pretty dire need of food. Ooh, there's a bus. A fairly intact bus as well. Hang on now. If this were multiplayer, I would totally take one of these things with me, but I do want to get one going. I just find it so weird that there's nothing to actually be found in these pumps, you know? I didn't even pay attention to you. Good thing you're not paying attention to me. Not the worst way to go. That was actually kind of creepy how... Yep, tons of food, tons of food. But that was kind of creepy how you went from casually humming in the corner and just sort of gently trust fell into my arms. Num num. These things are a great source of food. Yeah, we're definitely loading up the trunk with this stuff. These wells are so creepy. I kind of don't want to try and jump in because there's really no good way to get out. And as we saw before, it's very easy with this game's physics to accidentally fall in. But all this is going in the trunk. Wow, our luck turned so much in the early part of this video. I just noticed the sign. That is so weird. No text or like a name or logo or anything, just a random smattering of images. That's like the kind of thing you'd see in a dream. You come upon some place and it has something where a sign should be, but nothing that a sign would be. Alright, we'll ignore the little stuff. I'm not willing to sacrifice a night on the road for a couple of pieces of meat. Yeah. Boop. I always love that moment when you come back to the car, you rip the door open, and the cabin light comes on. Should probably turn our lights on as well, shouldn't we? I don't know, this is the kind of thing where, like, I actually am in a weird state where I find myself struggling to find things to talk about during the day, but it's just no trouble at all at night. There's something about the night that I definitely have an easier time focusing. I mean, I have heard all my life that, like, some people are a morning person or a noon person or a night person. I'm definitely a night person, and I didn't discover that until much later. Like, I never knew what people were talking about until I became much more aware of my own energy levels at a given time. I wonder if those aliens will decide to screw with us again. Oddly enough, we did actually see one in the morning in the last episode, I think. And I have to imagine, because of the way we've seen different structures unfold, that there's probably... Come on. It's become so hard to control! I have to imagine that there's probably new things that unlock as we go, right? It's actually really weird to me to go on for this long in a video game and realize that it's not generating this, or it probably is generating this in front of me as I go, but it's not unloading stuff behind me. Like, it's not totally random. If I wanted, I could turn this thing around and drive the 400-something kilometers back and go back to that house from the start. It's just a weird thought to me to have such a sense of scale to a video game world. I mean, I'm thinking back to all those, like, PS1 and PS2 games where, you know, you'd be in your little village and, you know, the city hall is right across from the dock, is right across from the factory. It's crazy how realistic things have gotten. It's weird how I almost think of games from when I was a kid in the same way as I used to think of, like, Super Mario Brothers. There's actually almost more of a gap. It's also much weirder, I think, to see the terrain change in the middle of the night, because it's so gradual, you almost don't notice it while it's happening. I mean, this whole video we've been in the plains, and now we're in the desert. I honestly can't think of whether it happened while the sun was up. You know, playing this game for as many hours as I have at this point, it actually makes me think about, like, how it would be seen if something like this, or really how a lot of games would be seen, you know, if they'd come out back in the day. And because in the PS2 era, you know, video games were all commercial products. Well, that's an interesting building. Have we seen these before? I think maybe we have. Well, as usual, let's use our headlights. Because if you were to pitch that to somebody in, like, the PS1, PS2 era, yeah, there's this game where you get in your car and you just go on a road trip. And there's no different detours. There's not really crazy sights to see, although there's some stuff off to the side of the road. But for the most part, you're just kind of chilling as you go down this endless highway. They would ask you, wait, so, like, what's the point? What's the story? What are the mechanics? And you'd be like, no, it's just that. I feel like the idea for what a game can be has changed a lot. And that's how real evolution happens. Technology enables people to do the things they want to do and, like, really explore ideas. But it's the changing perception of what a game is that allows it to really go in weird directions. And I'm being really inarticulate right now, but, like, there's a lot of different angles I could approach this from, and I'm just kind of trying to choose the best ones in real time. This is why video essays have to be written. Not a whole lot of use here, except for an AK-47, but oddly enough, I'm already covered in that department. Ooh, a whole container of water. Actually, what are you? Are you a coolant container? You are. I'm probably going to end up dumping you into the barrel then. Okay, we are set there. And so much food. What type of... you're orange or red paint. Wait, there was something else. There was something else I wanted to look at. Those tumbleweeds are literally just jump scare machines because they're silent and they move so subtly. You always just catch a glimpse of them out of the corner of your eye. There's a game that comes along that is totally unlike anything that's existed before, and then for the next decade or so, everything just kind of plays follow the leader with that. That's what happened with Far Cry 3. You know, Far Cry 3 comes along, and suddenly the Ubisoft formula is invented. And it was really, really fun for a while, but then they just kind of failed to innovate, and sooner or later, something else is going to come along. And it's going to completely change the way the action genre is done. But the cool thing is that the overall trend with each new development is that people really, really like more freedom. People like granularity of results. People like to be in charge of how things are approached. That was the whole idea of Far Cry 3, you know? It had the general gameplay of you were going up to these enemy settlements and trying to clear them. And it was up to you if you went guns blazing, if you decided to sneak around, and it just gave you this whole set of tools in order to accomplish that. It was all about, you know, people love emergent storytelling, I guess is what I'm up to. People like being able to talk about the games they play and have different experiences to share. And they like for the unexpected to happen. I mean, Far Cry's whole thing was it had animals and a whole, like, ambient population. So you could be in the middle of clearing out a base and suddenly you get pounced on by a tiger and you're trying to clear a base while dodging the thing. Or maybe even use it to your own advantage. Oh, wait. We do not want to forget the barrel. Yep. I feel like Walter White, you know? You know, I was going to say I feel like Walter White, but then I realized that by elaborating, it would be a huge spoiler. I feel like Breaking Bad has been around for so long now that, like, it almost feels like, I don't know, a Christmas Carol. Like that kind of story that just everybody knows. I mean, can you imagine if I had put a spoiler tag on talking about A Christmas Carol? It's weird how certain things just become so ingrained in public consciousness, you know? And I wonder how different life must have been back, 200 years ago, when no matter how big something is, you wouldn't necessarily expect everyone to know it. Actually, you know what? You know what's a movie I just watched? A Muppet Christmas Carol, and I loved it. And it's weird because it's not like A Christmas Carol is a story I'm particularly invested in or have, like, nostalgia for. I don't know if I've ever actually watched an adaptation beyond the shallow parodies that every kids show used to do. But what's amazing is that even though it's the Muppets Christmas Carol, it still plays the story itself completely seriously alongside all the goofiness that it adds. And Michael Caine actually gives I don't know how he does it, he gives like an Oscar-worthy performance, plays the role completely seriously alongside the Muppets. It's such a bizarre thing to exist, but it's so good. It even introduces a couple of its own spins that I really think are great. So one thing, for example, this is more of a joke than anything, but I do like it a lot. So obviously the whole thing of Muppets adaptations is that you'll have the star will probably be a human, a celebrity, and all the side characters will be played by the Muppets. And in this, Jacob Marley, the ghost of Ebenezer Scrooge's old business partner, is the first ghost that appears to him. And he basically gives him a glimpse of his fate, the afterlife that awaits him if he continues being so greedy and horrible. But in this, Jacob Marley is split into two characters. Now they're Jacob and Robert because they're played by Statler and Waldorf. And so now they're the Marley brothers, Jacob and Robert. Robert Marley, aka Bob Marley, which is just a funny little gag. Actually, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends did that years later, but I think this version is a lot more subtle. I like that the Ghost of Christmas Future is actually appropriately scary, and is actually done with an original puppet instead of one of the goofy characters that they could have put in that role. And actually it's here that they introduce one of my favorite changes to the story. So in A Christmas Carol, the Ghost of Christmas Future shows him the first Christmas, essentially, without Scrooge, immediately after he dies. But it doesn't reveal that early on. He kind of has to get that over time through context clues of what's going on, but essentially everyone is celebrating his death. But he doesn't hear the name. He only hears of some terrible old person who's recently died, and everyone's just kind of splitting his wealth up amongst themselves. And normally, it takes until he's shown his grave for Scrooge to finally get the picture, but in this, it's very clear in Michael Caine's acting that he knows. He already knows from the very beginning, and the only reason he goes through this whole song and dance is because he's in denial. When he's finally made to march over to the grave and clear the moss away, it's very obvious that he already knows what he's going to see, and he's just stalling because he doesn't want to be greeted with that sight. And that... How did a Muppet movie add more subtlety to this classic story? It's so weird. I also like, and I don't know if this is true in all adaptations, but I really like how, in most of the adaptations that I've seen, he doesn't really get the message until he learns that this is his grave. But in this, he gets the picture on the second ghost. He gets the picture and learns what he needs to on the Ghost of Christmas Present. And then, only afterwards, he's made to feel that it's too late. And I feel like that is such a gut punch to both his character and the audience, but it adds a lot of depth to the story. It makes you empathize with him in the final chapter, where you really don't in the beginning of the story. You go very quickly from an old man getting what he deserves to actually rooting for him. I actually just love the Muppets in general. My sister got me onto them after I just kind of slept on the Muppets as a concept for my entire life, and now they're one of my favorite franchises. I just watched Treasure Island the other day, which I don't like as much as Christmas Carol, but it was still very enjoyable. And obviously Tim Curry is great in it. Actually, you know what else he's pretty great in, even though it's a fairly small role, is Over the Garden Wall. I'm not going to talk about that one because I would have to spoiler it, and It wouldn't even be an efficient use of my time. I mean, I've been stammering through movies that I just watched, but it's been a few years since I watched Over the Garden Wall. But it's so great. I love how it's essentially just... It's fall in a box. It's just full of such love for the season. It's not really a Halloween show. It's really more about, like, autumn in general and everything that it represents. All from a fantastical lens where it's a completely original story and setting. Not to mention an all-star cast. Like, it's almost weird that this thing exists. 2014, so, like, well after the golden age of Cartoon Network. And they just put out this masterpiece. I mean, if you love Creepy and Comfy, I highly recommend Over the Garden Wall, even though if you're watching this channel, you've probably already seen it. That's another thing that I didn't get to until, like, years after it came out, and then when I watched it, I was like, how have I not seen this? But then again, I feel like it's only recently that I'm getting back into media and pop culture in general. I mean, this channel does take up a lot of time to work on. And for a lot of this channel's life, I've been recording videos and getting them edited in the few hours before they come out. It's only recently that I'm recording videos like up to a week before, and I'm actually able to start like enjoying things that people recommend to me again. But you know, for all the things I talk about, a lot of the time, it's things that I've built up in experience over my entire life. It's only recently that I'm actually experiencing new things as far as media goes. Ooh, what is... Ooh, this is a wibbly-wobbly hose. What on earth are these for? I don't know if I found one of these before. Gas and oil. I'll take some oil, but actually, how are we doing on gas? I think we have some more, but I haven't actually checked in quite a while. Yeah, we're doing fine on gas. That actually is the least of our worries. What about coolant? I feel like we might as well top off from this, right? Yep. There we are. We'll never run out again. I don't know if running low actually has an effect on us, and not just running out. Some of you said that that's how it works for oil. Yeah, I think I've talked about this before, but when you get out and can actually, like, hear the sounds around you, it does make for such a nice, like, disconnect. It sort of trains your brain to think that, like, okay, when I hear the rumble of the engine, I'm working. I'm just relaxing when I hear the birds and the cicadas. You know, for its fairly simplistic graphics, this game always manages to position your car cinematically on the road. I don't think the battery can actually run out. I mean, at this stage, I've never seen a battery as a part. I've never seen any kind of charge indicator. I don't think there's any downside to leaving your lights on all the time. Well, except for roleplay reasons, which I am happy to accept as a reason. I think my problem is I'm trying to control myself while going way too fast. But then again, after just flooring it for the entire game, it just feels like I'm going so slowly. Look at that, the sun right in our face. But it's kind of hard to, It's at that angle where it's kind of hard to block it without making it impossible to see the road. So I'm just kind of counting the seconds until it goes below the horizon. You know, I'm now realizing I haven't slept in, like, days, but, well, I'm not going to sleep through the night. Actually, I played a lot of driving games this month. I mean, this and, like, a couple of BeamNG maps. And I think that's my sign that it's finally time to try out Beware again. I mean, I do love the idea of being in exactly this situation, but you're being chased. Chased by an enemy that you can lose, but who will always be looking for you. And just like that, we're left in the void. That's so cool. I'm realizing now how, like, you can differentiate the ground in front of you and whether you're on a hill by the line where the stars just stop. Listen, I think my window is open and you can really, really hear the wind whipping by when you don't have your foot on the gas and you're just kind of drifting downhill. I mean, look at how fast we're going. I haven't put my foot on the gas in quite a while. We're literally just drifting through the night. And that's the appeal of road trips to me. I'm still not sure what those red lights in the distance are actually supposed to be. I mean, are they supposed to be planes? We've already seen UFOs, but it can't be a UFO. UFOs are green. Well, I suppose I should correct myself. These are, by definition, UFOs. One type of UFO that we've seen is green. And now we're heading uphill, so we no longer have the luxury of silence. Something I've been thinking about recently is that now that I do have more free time, I'd actually really like to start producing original horror content for the channel. I mean, I've got all the equipment, I've got a lot of the skills. My brother also has all the skills. That's Dan, who has helped with a lot of things on the channel. He's usually the other guy in the Urbex videos, and he actually shot the intro for the Stalker Called Pripyat series. He's actually won an award for cinematography. So I really think that, like, together we could probably do some pretty cool stuff. I have some pretty cool ideas, some stories that I'd like to adapt. And I'd even like to start writing again, because I wrote a couple of stories that I really like from about 10 years ago when I was getting out of high school. Actually, the Macy State Psychiatric Center map was made originally as a map to shoot that on, and I just kind of never got around to it. The scope of that project ended up getting so big that instead of just making the areas I was going to need, it ended up being a fully explorable thing that came out way, way before the actual animation. I don't know, I just feel like there's so much potential with the resources that this channel has now, and I'd really like to see some of that, even if it's just like experimental, to see some of it become a reality. Because I'm always annoyed that the kind of content that I enjoy, as far as horror goes, is fairly sparse. But, you know, be the change you want to see in the world. I always love the look of those tumbleweeds when they roll in from the side. There's that specific angle where they catch your headlights, and it's just so cool looking. I actually really like when I do notice over the engine that I can hear the crickets. I can see in my rear view and side view that the sun is fast approaching. Now let's keep running and avoid it for as long as possible, huh? Look, before YouTube, I didn't do a whole lot with my life. Like, I had that sorta pseudo job with my friend recording and editing, like, theater shows. But, like, that brought in like, years, less than this channel does in a month. So it was really more of a hobby than anything. And for the most part, I spent, like, 7-8 years just kind of, like, sitting in my room playing video games. Which, you know, almost doesn't seem like a bad problem to have, but that does take a toll. And, you know, the human mind wants to be stimulated. It wants to do stuff. And so now I find that after a couple of years of doing YouTube, when I have more time to myself, I don't know what to do with it. Like, I spend a lot of time just, like, sitting there staring at my Steam library. So I think it is good to, like, you know, find things to occupy the free time again. There's actually... I also am between a rock and a hard place when it comes to, like, new video games to get into, because I tend to like hard games. And, I'm kind of like legendarily bad at games when I play them on the channel because I'm usually playing them for the first time. But I do prefer difficult games because I find them more rewarding. I like to play stuff like Ready or Not. I like to play like flight simulators. But I'm kind of just in that wrong spot where I find really arcadey games to not be all that rewarding. But everything else I struggle to get into. I struggle to learn the ropes. Like, tactical shooters have always been my jam because, they're fairly simple. They are, at the end of the day, just shooters where you have to be careful. So even if they're more difficult, even if there's more to them, they're fairly easy to jump into. But now I've become, like, addicted to watching videos of, like, Hearts of Iron or, DCS. And it's like, man, it is such a learning cliff to get into those things. But it goes back to what I was saying before about how the idea of what a game can be has expanded so much since I was a kid. Because back in the PS2 days, pretty much every game was either a linear, story-focused, like, third-person thing, an FPS, which also had a linear story, or it was like a puzzle or, like a racing game. And so now there's been all these mix and matches of genres, things that back in the day probably wouldn't even be considered games. And I think now it's really great that even though there's a much wider variance of quality, there's really something for everyone, and if there isn't, there soon will be. Because these tools are just available to everyone now. Much like these games I'm trying to get into, it is just a matter of having the skills and the time. Now, I'm actually not sure if the chicken comes before the egg in this circumstance, but I also feel like part of the variety in types of games now has to do with the fact that people are a lot more attuned to vibes now. Like, people are a lot more willing to engage with something if all it does is put them in a certain mood. And there's a lot more focus on that type of thing. Now, that's not to say that games couldn't be atmospheric before that. I mean, look at Silent Hill 2, that's kind of its whole thing. In fact, I was always really impressed when somebody gave me the explanation that the reason the enemies are the way they are is that they're not supposed to be difficult, they're supposed to be present enough that you're always anticipating them, and so you always feel on edge. Not challenged, not like you're always about to die or in terror, just that, you're never safe. And so that, I think, is one of the earlier examples of a game that just wants you to marinate. And so this could almost be considered sort of similar in that respect. We've got an entire enclosed trailer. Can we have a look inside? Ooh, we can. I can't imagine this thing is super heavy, right? But I imagine it would probably be throwing us all over the road if it is. These games are doing what I always tried to do with writing and what I would want to do with short films, which is, saying, this is what I want you to feel, and we're just going to dedicate this whole project to making you feel that thing. And then just kind of allow you to stew in it. Which, I'm really glad that's becoming more of a thing, because I feel like it's causing people to become a lot more analytical of the media that they consume. Which, of course, is like the whole point of this channel, is about analyzing horror and how it works, and I guess in videos like this, it branches off into other feelings as well. But I think the more people understand something, like, because I occasionally get comments being like, why don't you focus on the game, you're talking too much, why are you, like, looking at every little thing? The reason is because the more you understand something, the more you appreciate it. And you don't have to understand something to appreciate it, but it allows you, when you understand something, to apply that understanding. Bro got so run over, he completely stopped the car dead in its tracks. That was impressive. The mood we're in right now is humor. Wow, I can't turn. I think I'm dragging him. Hang on. Okay. Get out of here, buddy. That was so funny. I was actually going to try and just lift him up through the window and put him on the passenger seat, but he's probably too big to really fit. What was I even talking about? I am completely distracted now. But yeah, I feel like a lot of times, if you take, say, for example, a horror movie that you really liked, it's a good idea to break it apart piece by piece and try and figure out what it was that you liked about it. Because it allows you to use the things that you liked as tools to create something new, and it allows you to identify the parts that made you feel a certain way, and if you so choose, to concentrate those things. Or to get rid of the parts that you didn't like, or that you feel take away from the overall mood. I'll try to think of some examples, but I'll try to think of those things as we examine this structure. We've seen one of these once before, but this is only the second time I think we're actually pulling up to one. We also need some water, but have a look at this. You've got the red light on top of the tower, so maybe we're actually seeing these things off in the distance. Their whole thing is that they spawn with the sky bridge over the roads, but I do actually wonder if they're not potentially spawning out in the desert. Oh no, it's not water that we need, it's beef jerky. Num. Completely filled us up, and it wasn't even an entire cube. Alright, well, let's break this thing apart. What are you? Oh, I think this is buckshot. We've never had a shotgun, and we're actually kind of loaded down with guns as it stands. We have more than we need. Nobody home? Ooh, and there's a sink here. 50 water. And your gas. Okay, so we're definitely going to be bringing in the barrel. Side view mirror. But you're not the one that we need. Some more gas. What are you? You're like some kind of weird mechanism. But what for? I can twist this thing, but you look like you're for like winding straps or something like that. I wonder if it has anything to do with that hose thing we found earlier. Nom nom nom. I'm not even hungry, I'm just grabbing food at this stage. I'm still very confused by these doors and what their purpose is. You know, now that I think about it, it's been a long time since we've seen one of those mansions. Now, they make for a great place to spend the night, but I think... Alright, we haven't slept in a long time. I think this would be a good place to sleep. But if you guys are going to be running about, maybe I'll do so up here at the high ground. You've spotted me. But I don't think your pathfinding is going to be able to get to me up here, so let's, That is the wrong button. There we are. Look at that angle. Sometimes it actually gives us some fairly cool camera angles. I'm not quite sure how it decides it. There we are. I see you've never left. Sleeping in a tall building in this game is kind of like being in a Tremors situation. By the way, I feel like I say this in every video, but I can never remember when I said it, so I say it again in every video. I only recently saw Tremors after being aware of it my entire life, and I loved that movie. There's a whole franchise, and I don't know when I'm going to get to the rest. But it's such a simple movie, but just such a stupidly enjoyable one. And here we are on the road again. Another night, more comfy desert breeze. I remember being super surprised as a kid when I realized that the desert actually gets like really cold at night. Like, for some reason, that just didn't compute to me. So, let me know, like, how you feel about this, because I've literally gotten into arguments over this, especially with Matthew. I can't stand the cold. Like, I'll be out in the heat and be miserable and be sweaty, but as long as I have some place where I can crawl back to and take a shower before I go to sleep, I'll be okay. The cold, I just cannot stand. You layer me up as much as you want. You know, I can't cover my face entirely. Gloves can only do so much. Or, well, I mean, there's been some pretty good gloves, but it's just... I completely want to go home the second I step into the cold. It's unbearable to me. Well, we're getting visited. Let's put on the parking brake. I hear that low woo, so it should be along any moment now. There you are. I've been expecting you. Been recording for nearly 2 hours now. It's about time you showed up. You know, I've actually come to appreciate your visits. It's kind of a break from the monotony of the road. Not that I much mind that either. There's some cool imagery, though. You're kind of chasing the moon off into the distance. Imagine that. Imagine they're just hovering here at ground level, always trying to catch the moon where they came from. And that would be interesting. You know, one of you, Canis, actually, drew fan art at one point after I did the first video, sort of implying that this road trip is being undertaken by the From the Fog character, and that Liberty and Percy are in the back seat, and I constantly have to turn around and scold them that I will turn this car around. Can you imagine? I mean, I'd probably have so much more gameplay-wise to talk about, but, oh man, I don't think I could take it. Like, I feel like Percy would constantly be singing those repetitive driving songs and trying to play the license plate game. Meanwhile, Liberty's always trying to jump out and leap onto the passing cars going the opposite direction. I have to constantly reach back with one arm and grab her by the wing and tug her back in. How far have we traveled? So I've got 460... We're at like 460 kilometers traveled, basically. I want to end this video probably when we've reached 10%. Hello? Is our friend actually figuring out what altitude adjustment is? That is a green light that just climbed really, really fast, and now it's just kind of hanging there. Oh no, the sun's coming up, and then we're probably not going to be able to see it anymore. Where are you going, friends from another world? Take me with you. And Darwin was here for a while, but now we're completely unburdened by passengers. We've only got you guys to talk to, which is an audience of probably a couple tens of thousands after a couple weeks, but still. You know, I've heard of clown cars, but that's getting a little bit ridiculous. I actually had this idea for a show. Nobody steal it, or actually somebody steal it because I'll probably never make it. But here's my pitch. Negan, right? Jeffrey Dean Morgan's performance as Negan on The Walking Dead, but he's an exorcist. Now, I'm not talking about that particular character, more of that archetype. You know, that like wisecracking, brutal maniac, but as an exorcist for the Catholic Church. I think that would be really, really funny. And you still play the horror aspects completely seriously, but with this character. Like, I was thinking he's really, really good at what he does, but because of his general attitude and his lack of bedside manner, and essentially choosing to, like, go private with his exorcism, he's been completely excommunicated from the Catholic Church, right? And the thought that kind of started me on this idea is, imagine it's the typical horror setup, you know, a distressed mother calls and wants an exorcism because there's something really wrong with her daughter. And he gets there, and, you know, the room is all dark, and there's, like, objects attached to the ceiling, and she's there on the bed just staring at him with this devilish grin. And she delivers that classic demonic line, "I am Legion, for we are many." And he just replies with a smirk and, whew, clown car. And just opens up his toolkit nonchalantly. He's going through the whole thing. The power of Christ compels you and whatnot. She breaks free of one of her restraints and slaps him. And with the mother standing right there, he just decks this little girl right in the face. She's horrified, and he just immediately turns around, prepped with his defense of, it's fine, she's not going to remember anything. I feel like there's a lot you could do with that concept. You know, you play all the horror completely seriously, just with this character in it. Howdy, bud. If I don't use the gun sometimes, we're never going to get to... Actually, you know what? Since you're giving us this window of opportunity, why not try the AK? I mean, it's been long enough. And there's never really going to be a situation where we desperately need it, I think, at this point. Unless it's got, like, way more planned for, like, 1,000 kilometers or something. Have I ever seen one of you guys squat before? I can squat way lower than you. Look at this, my feet are directly over my head. Alright, Slav main battle tank. Yeah, that sound was actually pretty satisfying. But I've always kept that one slot open because I need it to be able to pick stuff up. Yeah, boop. And let's see what we've got. So many toilets, so few of them connected. It's really these liquid containers that I'm most interested in, but a lot of them are open. Okay, we'll take the oil. Paint. Maybe we'll do something with red paint. I mean, we could stand to spice this thing up a little bit. Actually, can we paint the trailer? Oh, it doesn't seem so. That would have been so cool. There's alcohol. I am actually going to start carrying alcohol, because when my needs do run low, which isn't often, you start losing health, and alcohol does restore health. It dehydrates you, but I keep clicking the wrong button, and it's always that button. Alright, on the road again. I'm probably going to wrap it up soon. I'm so tempted to go exploring off the path, but there's just never an opportunity. Like, everything is so much farther away than you think. Like, you know, those rock formations out there, they look like they're so close, but they're also huge. And so it's actually probably like a good couple minutes of driving. And then you turn around and you realize you can't see the road anymore. Now, that first episode has got me real paranoid for ever leaving again. There are actually strategies people have posted where you can, like, if you search in the correct pattern, you can pretty reliably get back to the road, simply by virtue of the fact that it travels really in one direction. But still, it's not an experience I'd like to go through again. There is actually a challenge that I want to attempt, and I feel like you can probably do it, and if so, it would be, like, the greatest achievement in human efficiency. I just want to wait for the road to level out just a little bit more. Because this is going to require focus, and that focus is not going to be on the road. Okay, we won't be going too terribly fast, and... No, it's not working. If I could pee out the window while I'm going 80 down the highway, it would be a new revolution in terms of human productivity. You know, I have to say, the desert imagery is growing on me as well, even if I did always prefer the plains. And I'd like forests even more, but look, we've got the twisted poles and the dusty roads and the shimmer from the heat. All those rock formations in the distance. It actually is, you know... There's a reason why trucker culture is so intertwined, I guess, with desert imagery. I actually do love the idea of, like, the open roads, because, look, I'm on Long Island. I'm not used to just open stretches like this, with no traffic and going on for hundreds of miles. But I had a teacher back in high school who talked about how, you know, he spent some time living in Colorado, and he came across this scene where he was driving down this one long country road, and there were two cars stopped in the middle of it, and he pulls up behind, and there's one guy in the right lane and another guy in the left lane, and they're just stopped opposite each other with their windows down and talking to each other. That kind of thing would never happen here, and it is probably so normal out there, but it's the kind of thing that around these parts is almost unthinkable. And of course they're not oblivious, like they wrapped it up and got a move on once they saw somebody was coming up behind, but like still, I actually kind of, on the one hand, my New Yorker brain wants to be really upset with that, but I also think it's really cool to have that level of chill. I'm actually like looking into buying houses like sometime hopefully in the next like couple of years, and I'm definitely looking out in the sticks. Like there's no way I want to stay in the city even if I could afford to. There's something over there, because look, I'm a simple man. I don't need much. My biggest like big dream desire from a place of my own is having a spare bedroom that I can just keep completely empty and that's dedicated for VR. And that's really not hard to do, because the thing about YouTube is I can do it from anywhere. I don't need to tie myself to a city where there's like a variety of opportunities. And so that means that things get, well, it expands my options greatly. I actually forgot where I was going with this, but look at you just wandering out into the desert. Oh, I appreciated it more when you were, oh God, oh God, oh God. What was that about? There were like two of you merged together. And it at least looked like my blade wasn't doing anything. I was seeing like sparks instead of blood. Okay, is there a well somewhere we can toss you down? I don't like the idea of you just remaining up here free to do as you please. Okay, we're gonna need our shovel for that. I wonder if higher value things spawn in like buried boxes. There's a fridge back here. Sure, I'll enjoy something to eat. It's time to get some water again. But this is one of those abandoned ones that doesn't have water. Luckily we have our own. Come on, get out of there, you. Daylight's a-wastin'. Come on now. There we are. And now we can break you, and it's full of dash ornaments. Yeah, well, it's not like this wasn't a worthwhile use of my time. At least we got to go see something. That's the thing, is that, like, the driving is great and all, but this game understands that, you know, sometimes you want to take a break from it. And it's weird that we've reached a point with gaming where you want to take a break from your relaxation so that you can do more relaxation and get back to your relaxation afterwards. But hey, people enjoy it. I enjoy it. Alright, I think that's enough water for now. We've exhausted everything in the barrel, but we still got an entire container full. And I don't want to waste a night. I don't want... See, people are afraid about burning daylight. I'm afraid of losing nighttime. That's how I feel a lot of the time when it comes to this channel. You know, I do all my recording at night because I live in a house with people, and it is just so noisy to try and record during the day. I'm between two major highways and a railway. And then I'll just use the day to edit. And, I guess, sleep somewhere in there as well. It does feel really good when I've just finished doing, like, an entire week's worth of videos, and now I know I can just sleep and do whatever I want for a long time, because I went a good couple of years where I never had that opportunity. And it's entirely due to my own procrastination. I mean, like, you know, a year, 2 years ago, I was putting out, like, 3 videos a week, and it was hard to keep up. But now I've gotten into such a flow that I'm putting things out almost every day, and I have more free time than ever, so that's really cool. Also, is it just me, or are these poles starting to, like, sag more and more? I mean, they're fine now, but I feel like I was running basically almost under a canopy for a little while. I do love the idea of moving out, like, you know, into the middle of nowhere. Of course, you want, like, some amenities nearby. So you don't want to be, like, super, super out in the sticks, but something that I'm actually kind of nervous for, something that I've never had to deal with, is living completely on my own. I mean, I've had plenty of times where I go out of my room in the middle of the night to investigate a spooky noise. I don't know what just happened there, whether it'll show up on OBS. I just had a weird visual bug. But what's that going to be like when I really am alone in the house? I'm just imagining I get there and it's all great and I'm setting up the furniture and plugging in the computer first thing. And then night falls and I just keep looking over my shoulder. Keep looking at the windows that don't have any blinds on them yet. Getting used to all the new sounds and weird idiosyncrasies of the structure. And realizing that there's nobody else home. I mean, you know, right now there are people behind those closed bedroom doors. What happens when you take that feeling away? Just the other morning, I had like a really weird experience where I went downstairs to get on the treadmill, and the treadmill is in the den, and there's like a basement door in that room, and the basement door was open. And it's really weird for anyone to have even been down there, much less leaving it open overnight! Oh my god, I had worked myself up and did that to myself. Okay, jump scare. Alright, well, I was thinking about wrapping it up soon. I always like to have one crazy thing happen before then, and, you know, that seems like a good time. If we were to get wheels and doors on this thing, I wonder if this bed would actually behave the same way as the trailer, and there'd be, like, changed physics where things don't fly off. Come on, you. I need you to get out of the way so I don't run you over on the way out. I say wheels and doors, but hey, there's actually nothing in this game that says we have to have doors. That's another way games have changed, is that there's a lot less arbitrary restrictions in them, I feel. I mean, look at a game like Project Zomboid. That's one of the least restricted games out there, and I think it's so cool how you can really make your base anywhere. That's one of the coolest things about it. Boop, and boop! I love the big booms. Ooh, a crowbar. Okay, we'll take that with us. Why not, right? And I love how crowbars, they do come in all kinds of colors, but ever since Half-Life 2, they only come in Gordon Freeman red. What are you? A fuel tank. 100% gas. Oh, that must be a fuel tank to like a truck like we see out there. Probably even too big for that. How are we doing on water? Okay, we will be filling up that barrel and we're going to be good for the foreseeable future. Come on. I don't know if it says what kind of units, or no, it's liters, right? So somebody tell me how heavy this barrel must be. And that's that. So we'll close you, and be on our merry way with our super strength. Or at least I imagine so. You know, back when I was in middle school, we had a shop class. It was called tech, but it was really shop. And there was this one kid who was, like, huge. Like, I'm talking like Andre the Giant huge. And there was an anvil in that class that wasn't used for anything we did, but the teacher was kind of a nutjob. And it was an oil drum that was filled with cement, and then the anvil was bolted on top. And this thing was like the sword in the stone in that class. Like, everybody always tried to move it, and no one could. And then there was this one huge kid who just did it effortlessly. No idea how much that thing must have weighed, but it was far more than I could even budge. The kind of thing where I would push against it with all my might, and my feet would just slide against the ground. I actually weigh less now than I did in middle school, so that was quite a turnaround. I'd probably be even less capable of moving that thing these days. Every time we hit a bump, there's a lot of slide back there. I think I'll probably end this video once we hit about 500 kilometers. I think that'll be a nice round place to leave it. And what'll this be? Will this be episode 3 or 4? I think it'll be 4, actually. It's weird. It's weird how I lose track of this, because you guys were asking me for, like, so long to to play this game, and it took me so long to get to it. Many such cases, many such cases where you guys begged me to play something for a long time, and I was like, yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to do anything with that, and then I play it and it's amazing. From the Fog was one such instance, which is nuts to think about. The sunrise in the rear view with the poles receding actually is kind of a pretty sight. When you're on a road trip and you see the sun starts to come up, it really makes you think about how far you've come, and there is sort of a sense of accomplishment to it. You ever have one of those days, it doesn't even have to be a road trip, but one of those days where a ton of things just keep happening, where it's really busy, and every once in a while you catch yourself thinking back to earlier events in the day, and they almost seem like distant memories. Like you can't believe that between that experience and this one, you haven't slept at all. That's something I think about all the time, is that life doesn't work on standard, like, gaming linearity rules. It works on Half-Life rules. It's one continuous experience. Like, just imagine every obscure memory of your 3-year-old self, who you were then, who you are now, and realize that you can, only broken up by sleep, trace a straight line from then to your current self. It's insane to think about. Buildings have actually become a lot more sparse, and I do have to wonder if it's not entirely random. Because it did take quite a while for us to encounter our first haunted mansion. It took a while for us to start encountering those houses, and I'm wondering if there's not more later on. I don't know if you guys have told me in comments and I just forgot. But I also wonder if it's not somewhat paced. Like, does it give us a lot of things in the early game just so that we can get our basic needs met, and then make it more sporadic so that it becomes more of a management type of game? Who goes there? Another gas station detached from even a building. And another of those trailers. Well, I suppose I should at least have a look quickly. Wow, this one is really nice looking. Yep. And nothing. But I will happily help myself to some more spray paint. Maybe we will, just to switch it up, go for a different paint job sooner rather than later. And what kind of containers have we? Gas. And whatever this thing is? Oh, you've got your own brake. That's kind of neat. Yeah, this game really does just show that, like, when you have, like, complex systems, even if it doesn't do much, it just allows you to engage so much. Like, look, I could play something like DCS or Nuclear Option, but, you know, I've been messing around in VTOL VR, and that game's whole gimmick is, yeah, I'm in the plane, but look, I can push all the buttons. You know, people like tactile stuff like that in games. It makes you feel more in control. It makes you feel like you're doing more, even if what you're actually doing is fairly simple. That's actually this game's whole thing, isn't it? It's extracting a lot from the barest, simplest premise possible. It always seems to take that as a challenge. The overall theme of this video, I guess, has kind of been how gaming has changed, but I guess I'll use that as a jumping off point to get in one more point about that. Gaming has become so much more complicated and at the same time so much more simple. It's like a gold bar or a diamond. It's just super dense, while not necessarily having to be all that big. And so many games function that way now. We are actually sorta reaching that moment now, and anyone who's been on a road trip has probably seen this point where all the conversation stops because somebody points out the I cannot remember the name for the odometer? Is that what it's called? When it's about to hit some major milestone, and everyone, including the driver, are just entirely focused on that. Will we hit it before? I can't fully see it, but will we hit it before or after we get to this next structure? Not that we have any reason in the world to stop right now. Yep, it's going to be after we pass it. Oh! Okay, and it took that personally. It's not going to let us stop. Oh, please get off of me. Okay, we're going to have to work something out. Okay, I don't think we're done quite yet. Go on. Please tell me you're able to start. No. Come on. What's wrong? Do you not have gas? No oil? How would I even check if I can't get under you? Can I try and pull you a bit? No such luck. Can I climb over the top of my own car and push? This jump leaves a lot to be desired. Nope. Go on, you! Feats of superhuman strength. Okay, I'll take the hint and check out your stupid roadside diner. I'm just kidding, I love roadside diners. Are those from us? Oh yeah, I think they actually are. And no blood, so that's good. I hear an enemy. Let's put you... Come on now. Let's put you here. Wow, did our... No, our rear view didn't fly out. What are you then? I can't even tell what this thing is. Okay, but I'm really not in the mood for this right now. I've just had kind of a rough day.
There's going to be blood everywhere.
Interesting. Can you open doors? You can. Thanks for getting that for me. No self-preservation instinct whatsoever, which I am happy to oblige. Good thing there's fresh food in the rusted fridge, as much as that may defy logic. Actually, it should be possible to top off from this sink, but nah. See, this sink is really frustrating because you can really only get small bottles under it. But thankfully we're at the point where we really don't have to worry about that too much. I guess this guy decided he didn't need that coffin life anymore and was just gonna sleep in the trunk of this car or whatever. But I don't think it's really got anything we need. What kind of doors do you got? Not the kind we're looking for. So let's hit the road, despite this place's aggressive insistence that I stop for a bite, which I suppose did work out for it in the end. But man, it goes back to what I was saying, how it's crazy how this game can manage to be so eventful and so uneventful simultaneously. It's honestly a superpower. It's just, it's gonna be kind of hard to get around you. There we are. Our trailer is doing fine. And back at it. It's a game of travel and diversions, but the current diversion is going to be when are we going to hit 500? We should be very, very close now. Although, I'm pretty sure that doesn't just count our distance down the road. I'm pretty sure that's the total distance we've traveled, and there'll be a good amount that we lost to off-roading in the first part. Always got to keep that in mind. So just because we hit this doesn't necessarily mean that we're 10% of the way done with this thing. Only however many hours later. How many hours do I have in this? Probably like 10. And roll over. Awesome. I was going to end it there, but let's say we go until sunset. I think it's so funny how, over the course of several episodes, Darwin's model just like deteriorated and detached to the point where it was actually destroying the vehicle as we tried to drive. When he wants to get out, he really lets you know it. But it's just so bizarre that that can even happen. And like, it was I never saw it get worse, but it was in a worse and worse state, like every time I loaded up the game. Part of me almost wanted to see like just how far we could take that, but those parts ended up pretty far from their points of origin. I'm so tempted to go camp out amid those rocks. I'm gonna do it. I mean, if we're not gonna be finding another structure anytime soon, we might as well pull up to here and have one of those good old, like, cowboy campfires, right? Even absent the actual fire. There we go. Look. You never get a good sense for the actual intense scale of these things until you're right beside them. Well, let's just park right on over here. Let's circle the wagons so that we have our own nice little cranny here. And now looks like a good spot to end it, even though we are not actually going to be sleeping here. I only went until sunset so that we could start off the next episode already on the road. But until then, if you like this video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more creepy and comfy content. If you have any ideas for other videos you think I should do, the best place to suggest that will be at the Discord, which I will link in the description. If you want to try this game out for yourself, that link will also be in the description. If you want to support me on Patreon, that link will be in the description. And as always, I will see you in the next one. Perfect. From here, we can still see the lights of the street over there.